Welcome to another episode of the Man Up Podcast. Today we're diving deep into fatherhood, leadership, and legacy with Don Manning from Crazy Cool Family. Don shares game-changing insights on how to win at work and at home without sacrificing one for the other. If you're ready to level up as a dad, husband, and leader, you won't want to miss this. Stay tuned. This episode could change the way you see family forever.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Man Up Podcast. I'm your host, Terry Gwaltney, and today we have Don Manning from Crazy Cool Family with us on the show. Don's an entrepreneur, a husband, grandfather, podcast host, author, probably most important, the lover of Jesus. Don, welcome to the Man Up Podcast.
Hey, thanks, Terry. Appreciate it, man. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I get your daily emails. I stumbled across you somewhere online, and online activity can be a godly thing.
Yes, exactly.
And a tool used in the hands of the wise. And I get a lot out of your daily emails, and so that kind of resulted in kind of the beginning of this opportunity for us to be able to talk today. And man, I love one of the quotes that I read on part of your bio. It says, "You don't have to choose between being a great parent and a successful professional." And, one of the things we try to teach leaders is, you can win at work and you can win at home. You don't have to make the choice. You just have to do it right. And it sounds like this is very similar, but just in the lane of parenting. So I hope we can unpack that a little bit today. Super excited about having you on the show. I know as men, we grow up and we make two decisions. One, I think my dad was great. I'm just going to do what he did. Or I'm never going to do what he did because it wasn't that great. and both of them can cause us to kind of really veer off and miss the mark. And it's kind of a lazy way to approach our parenting. And I know you have a lot of experience in that space. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but super excited for what you're going to share with us today. I want to learn more about your ministry to families, but I'd like to really start by letting the audience just get to know you a little better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So talk to us about how long you've been married, how'd you meet your spouse, all that great stuff.
So we're from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, northern, not Dallas, but north of there. But if you're national podcast, everybody will relate to Dallas-Fort Worth. My wife and I, born in the same town, or raised, never knew each other though until after college. Got set up on a blind date, but we experienced all the same middle school, high school, college, everything. But we even knew a lot of the same people, but had never met each other because she's 4 years younger than me, and so we were different. But anyway, one of my best friends set us up on a blind date, and that was and when at that time she had a 2-year-old daughter, and so we became a blended family. And so have dealt with some of the issues of, raising a child that's not mine. And then we proceeded to have 6 kids together, 3 girls and 3 boys. So in order, I have 4 girls and 3 boys that are now from 35 to 19 and about to graduate my last one from high school. And so now everybody's like, "Oh, are you so sad?" I'm like, "No, not really," because we've been parenting for about 34 years. It's how long we've been married, and about to release our last one into the college world. And so, it's been at the same, when young in our marriage. First year marriage, actually, we helped to start a church in this area, and still there today. And that church is, now a multi-site church, and we've just had the blessing. I tell parents a lot, especially today with how the local church is being maligned so much. Man, a local church is a great place to camp your family. I mean, I've baptized all 7 of my kids in we tend to treat churches as what can this church do for me? Early in our marriage, somebody said, "Man, what are you going to do? How can you serve your church and it will be a blessing to your family?" So we just really enjoyed that. Business-wise, I'm a CPA by trade, and eventually gravitated the last 20 years or so to the real estate business and locally. And then, so have just enjoyed being a local businessman. You were talking about making choices between home and family. Yeah, I mean, it really is the choices. I always say that, there's always that, remember that illustration of in order to, you put the big rocks in first, and then you put the pebbles,
Yeah.
and then you put the sand in order to fill everything up. I tell dads a lot about what are your big rock choices? Because the big rock choice, as I look back on 35 years of being married and having a career, man, my big rock choices were important because I chose things like, for me with a lot of kids, I chose a job that I didn't have to travel. Okay. That doesn't mean nobody can travel. It doesn't mean that's the right, but it's like, that was something that impacted my life greatly. And we make those big rock choices for our family and for our God and align it with our career. And we get to see the blessings of that over time. So that's my 2-minute version of me. So, and me and my family, my wife, Suzanne, we are just enjoying this next season of life. And so 5 married, 8 grandkids, 2 more on the way, and it's getting crazy. We talked about this the other day. We're like, what were we thinking when we had 7 kids? We didn't think about the 25 grandkids that are coming. So that's where we are right now.
Yeah. That is awesome. Well, me and my wife, this is year 39 for us in August. We have 3 kids, all married, 6 grandkids. I think that's it all the way around. I really can't imagine much more than that. That's, they keep us hopping. We're super involved in their lives. They all live really, really close. And so, it's like, I think you get to take, maybe we'll talk about this before we get off here, but you get to take the experience that you learn from raising your kids, mix that in with some of the regrets that I think you only get in hindsight. And then you can really shine when it comes to, being a grandparent. And so we're really enjoying that season, as well. But, so you really do. The name totally fits. Crazy Cool Family.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about that too. We call it Crazy Cool because crazy, but it is crazy. It can be a chaotic mess, but really the reason we use the word crazy is because God's ways are crazy. They are different. That if you're going to be an awesome dad, if you're going to be an awesome husband, you're going to do things to the world. You're going to be a little crazy. You're going to be a little bit different. And when we start to embrace that craziness of God, quote unquote, then we do things differently than the world, and the world thinks we're a little crazy, but God doesn't, and it works. And the second thing is the reason it's cool is because of all the things I've done in life, the coolest thing I've ever done is raise a family. And when family goes well, when not perfectly, sometimes I see men a lot, like you have 6 grandkids, 3 kids that are married. You probably, I'm going to bet you have great relationships with them and we almost apologize for that, or we want to diminish it. And I want to say, no, it's not perfect, but man, you can have, and we like to show dads, especially, how to have great relationships with all your kids. You can change that legacy. You can. Again, not perfect. It's almost like we think that we're not being humble when we say it, but yet, what if we just say, yes, I want that, and it's happening. It's been a great experience for us, and so that kind of happened to us. We really started to seek the scripture about what God said. I remember being a young dad. I always do my parenting in decades now because I'm old, and so this is my 4th decade. And at the end of my 1st decade, I said, "Man, I don't know what I'm doing." And at that time, I have 4 girls. It's me and 5 women in my house. And if that doesn't elicit sympathy from men, then something's wrong with you. But I just couldn't figure it out. I would try things with my wife and she would get frustrated with me. I'm like, why is this happening? I had my own family situation I came from, and it was like, but I realized that I was going to have a big impact in my kids' lives, and I was going to have a big impact in my wife's life. And I was not an expert in fatherhood, for sure. I didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of went before the Lord, and I wanted to be that. I was trying, but felt like I was failing a lot. And so I just went before the Lord. I said, Lord, I'm going to give you two things. I'm going to be a learner about family, and I'm going to give it all I got. And we started to learn some things. You talk about, Terry, about culture. And in the business world, a lot, I know you have a culture podcast, and, it's like I needed to learn how to create the culture in my home where it was toxic and it was harsh and it was, and unintentionally I wasn't like I was trying to fail, but we learned a lot on the way, studied God's word, studied other people that were experts in the field, and just started to learn that, man, when we connect with our kids, great things happen. And we learned it actually. God's the greatest example of a father. And he said, I want to have a relationship with you. More than anything, I want to have a relationship with you. And we're like, what if that became the focus of our family, so to speak? What if instead of control and obedience and all the things that we were being taught to do, what if we focused on connecting with our kids and relating to them? And especially with the girls, that was that second decade. It totally changed the way I parented. I mean, like total. It wasn't that I didn't want obedience. It was that obedience wasn't the primary objective. Connection was, and when connection happened, obedience followed.
Yeah, it's amazing. Just a little bit of a perspective shift, and the byproduct of that was exactly what you wanted anyway. It's
yeah, and it wasn't a linear path. It wasn't started with disaster and moved to success in a linear path. It was a lot of ups and downs. I mean, a lot of relational education and things like that. But man, over time it worked. And we established, and the culture in our home changed. I mean, it changed from being more, performance centered to more life giving. And they were still performing, but it was more of a loving atmosphere. We had more fun at home. It was, our kids wanted to be there rather than wanting to get, I remember when I used to coach my kids' sports team, my girls, and they didn't want to ride in the car with me. Because they knew that with great intentions, I was going to tell them everything they did wrong in the game. Well, what if I started telling them all the things they did right more? And what if I encouraged them more? And what if I didn't? What if I realized that car ride wasn't the best time to give instruction, that there were other times? And what if I asked them questions rather than lecture them all the time? Things that were culture building. And honestly, man, I didn't know how to do any of that. And today I know how to do a lot more of that. And then, and man, it really did change our family dynamics.
So when did that click where you realized, wow, I have learned something that I wish somebody would have taught me? And then you turned around and began to try to give that away.
It's interesting. That's a great question. So I would say, kind of into the second decade, we have teenage girls and we're having some success in our home, some success. I mean, it's again, not perfection, but, and I'm in that local church still, and I'm in leadership in the local church, and people started coming up to us and going, hey, what's going on with your teenage daughters? I can't get my teenage daughter to talk to me, and your teenage daughters get along and they want to talk to you. And I just feels like your family is vibrant, if you will. And we were like, man, we don't know. We're scrapping every day, man. I mean, I got 7 kids. I mean, I'm working. I'm just trying to figure this out. But we like to hear the Lord's voice in our life. I think that's something that is that God does speak to us. And we felt like the Lord said, hey, over the years, I've shown you some things. I want you to write it down so you can share it with younger parents. That's all, and really we just started doing it in our church. So that was, I believe, like I said, I believe in the local church. And so we just started to, never thought it'd go past there, honestly, Terry. We started to just gather people in our church and say, hey, we're open to teaching parenting classes or, Like first thing we did was a 12-week small group, and we just developed this curriculum. We called it Heart Connected Family, and we taught people in our church. So that was the first time that we ever really started to think maybe we got something here that other people can benefit from.
That's awesome. And so at what point, let me back that up because maybe two different questions. At what point did you realize that there was probably a call of God on your life? So obviously that was probably more of an assignment, God speaking to you, and you didn't know the fullness of what that was going to look like, but at least you kind of knew what the next step was. Was there a time before that you sensed like, there's a call on my life for ministry outside of just the call that
well,
we all have?
man, I can even say when I was in high school, I started talking about maybe being a preacher, and my mom quickly said, "Go get a job." She said, but I mean, she was wanted me to make sure I was provided for financially. That was a big concern of hers, and it was good. I'm glad I've been in the business world, but I don't know about calling for ministry. What I would say is that when I was in that first decade of parenting, even in career choices, I decided what I feel like where the Lord spoke to me was He said, "Hey, no matter what you do, I want you to dive deep into your family." And that was, and so don't sacrifice your family. One of the things I remember hearing from the Lord in that first decade, don't sacrifice your family on the altar of success. And so it wasn't like a call to ministry.
Yeah, so
it was my first call, I feel like, was to my family. And then I proceeded, Terry, to feel like I was botching it. I just, over the first several years, like I was saying, I felt this call to my family. So I was trying to make choices that honored my family, honored my marriage. We were in a local church that was discipling us. So things were, we were getting the benefit of that. But it wasn't necessarily a call to ministry. It was a call to my family. And I felt like that, man, I don't know what I'm doing. It's like teaching me, if you took me out, I've never been a big hunter, but if you were to take me out hunting, I wouldn't do it very well, and I would need a lot of teaching in order to be a great hunter. I've got buddies that are great, and they know everything about hunting, and they know where all the deer are, and they call them by name and everything else. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. You guys are amazing at your craft. Well, I kind of felt like that as a dad. I was like, I'm a novice. How do I get to be an expert? And I want to be an expert at the most important thing in life.
Yeah. Well, that's so good. Looking back, because there's probably a lot of guys that are listening to this that could relate. In hindsight, what could you have done to be better prepared for parenting?
Well, we've got all the curriculum you need because, really, and honestly, what I did is years into that, I'm like, oh my goodness, I started studying things and I'm like, man, this stuff's all over the board. And why hasn't somebody just written a playbook that shows me what I need to focus on? If I, some of the best coaches, if you look at coaches, they have a system. They have an offensive system or a defensive system, and they teach that and they drill it over and over and over again. One of the things that, one of my only claim to fame, it was actually through my son. But you remember when Sean Payton was exiled from the Saints for the year that he did it with he got in trouble because of Bountygate or whatever. And he was, well, his kid went to my kid's school. And so he coached my kid's 6th grade football team. So Sean Payton was our offensive coordinator for a season. And I watched him, and all he had these 12 plays, and it was a system. And then they did walkthroughs over and over again. And I watched a master coach a bunch of 6th graders. And it was just a phenomenal experience because he did it. It was super. There were certain key things they focused on. They did them over and over again, and they became a really good little football team. And so that's why I said, why can't somebody do that with parenting? and with Christian parenting in particular. And that's what we really tried to do at Crazy Cool Family. I said, I want to teach you in 5 minutes the key things you need to learn. Now, it's going to take you, just like that team, we had to go over them to learn them, but it was over, it's going to take years to learn it. But, and that's what, I wish that I would have had that. I'll give you an example too, that in my engagement period, before I got married, there was a guy named Tommy Nelson, who's a pastor at a church called Denton Bible here. And he had this will show you how old I am. It was a cassette tape series on Song of Solomon, the book Song of Solomon. I listened to that. It changed the way I viewed marriage. And as I entered into marriage, there were some concepts I learned that helped me to honor my wife, to fight better with my wife, to do the things. Now, we still had issues and everything else. So that's what I wish I would have done more of. Is I tell dads a lot, become a student of the game you're playing. Come and learn, be a learner. Most dads know more about fantasy football than they do about being a dad. Okay, let's change that because it's out there. And that's what we've tried to do with Crazy Cool Family, is give them a way to learn that quickly and easily.
So needed too. So if you rewound that, I'm just curious, what was the greatest lesson that your parents ever taught you?
Say that again.
When it comes to, what's the greatest lesson you would say your parents ever taught you in regards to parenting?
My parents, I came from a very stable family. My dad passed away last year, and they were 8 days shy of 70 years of marriage. And so my mom's still alive. And so what I would say is the biggest thing they taught me was stability, loyalty, that family's important. It is, and it left me with a desire to, when I raised my family, to invest in it and do it well and, to the best of my ability.
So you kind of knew what it needed to look like and what a picture of longevity looked like. You just didn't fully know how to do it.
And what I would say the biggest deal is that, and I think this is where I find most parents when they're starting out, is we don't learn when we're younger really how to connect with God and to connect with others. I didn't realize how much God valued relationship and the culture, if you will, of my home, and how that really unlocked so much love and inspiration in my home. And so the key I didn't know. I mean, I was trying to be a great dad by making them obey and doing the right things, and but what I really found is that I needed to start with the same thing God starts with connection and acceptance. Think about what God said to Jesus when he came out of the baptism. This is my son, whom I love. In him I'm well pleased. All positive statements, all encouraging. He didn't say, now, son, you need to do this, this, and this in order to start your ministry. He just blessed him. And as I learned to do that more, that was the thing I didn't know coming out of my life, out of my upbringing, that changed for me.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. So I'm actually writing a book right now that I'm finishing here this month. And one of the chapters I just finished was on the power of listening. And, for men, we've taught, our team for a long time, typically we don't really listen. We're listening to respond. We're not listening to understand. And so we're not really tuned in. So I understood that principle. I understood it better than I practiced it, but, I was aware of it. So I was trying to practice it at home. But I just recently went to another marriage enhancement weekend, like literally within a month. And for the first time, a light bulb kind of clicked with me. And what I realized is that wives need to be heard and understood, because that's how they feel the emotional connection. And it's like, I understood, well, I don't want you to solve the problem. I want you to listen. I don't want you just to respond. I had all that, but I never understood the why. And when my wife opened up, I realized the why was I feel closer to you and I feel connected. Man, that was a game changer for me. So just exactly kind of.
And
what
how
you're
long have you
talking
been
about,
married?
Except with your spouse.
Yeah,
39
takes us
years.
a while, doesn't it?
Yeah, we're slow learners. Worth
Yes.
waiting on, I hope, but very slow learners. But it's the power of the connection. It's exactly what you were talking about. And I think if guys and dads could understand the why that is so important, like you realize this is probably not the best time to debrief and download on all the things you can improve on after your volleyball game or your softball game, girls.
Yeah.
You know, it probably needed to happen, but the affirmation and the listening and how they felt about the game and all that other stuff is probably, so it was the timing probably as well, because they really needed
And
to
my
feel that
instruction
connection
was
from their hero.
awesome. You know, I mean, it really was. I was a good coach. I had great instruction for them, and it was right on target. And if they would listen to me, they would improve. But that really wasn't the most important thing. And I love it that you said that listening. So I love it that you said that listening, that your wife needs to feel heard and understood because it's the way she feels connected. And so one of we have 4 culture pillars, and one of them is called creating a safe haven in your home, and it's really about listening. And the other part is about is about encouragement. You know, is not only do you listen, you learn to speak life. Well, I tell dads a lot, and it's what if you become instead of a critical parent, what if you become an inspiring parent? What if I can help you, and it helped me tremendously get to the same objectives you want to get to, but have a better method to do it. The same thing with listening. Listening we think that lecturing is the way to get our kids to do things. But what if we listen to them and make it their idea? Wow. Now all of a sudden the kid says, they come home with a problem. You say, hey, what do you think you should do about it? What do you think God is in this? And they say, well, I probably need to reconcile that relationship and maybe ask them to forgive me. That's a great idea. Wow. Why don't you go do that? Now they own it. And so the extent of your listening, not only do they feel heard, now we flip it and we make it that most of the time our kids know what they've done wrong. And they actually know how to fix it a lot of time. They're pretty smart individuals. And listening just unlocks, it's a superpower, that unlocks so many things in our family. And the same way with encouragement, on the flip side of that sports example. So years later, I'm learning, okay, and one of my sons says I'm concerned that he's playing football, and I'm concerned that he's not a hard worker. Okay, legitimate concern. How many dads out there are concerned that your kids aren't going to work hard, and it bugs you? Okay, legitimate topic. And so I'm taking him to this training about, with a really good trainer to teach him how to be a better football player and how to lift weights and all the things. And so, in the past I would have said, you know what, you're lazy. You're not working hard. You got to work hard. If you're going to do anything in life, you got to work harder. And what I'm speaking to my son is you're not enough. And if you need to be better. Mm-mm. Instead, now I've learned some things. I say, I've got a big check for that guy because I'm going to pay him for several different lessons, like a whole semester. So I have an opportunity. And I say, hey, son, I want you to pull out that check. And he does. He pulls out the check and he says, wow, that's a big check. And I said, well, it's several lessons. I mean, I'm paying for deals. But I said, let me tell you something. You're worth that. You're worth every penny that I'm paying. And I'm so proud that God gives me the ability financially to be able to write that check for you and to invest in your football career. Now, tell me something. What do you think your responsibility? I'm writing the check. I'm taking you to the deal. What's your responsibility? He said, my responsibility is to do what the trainer tells me and to work hard at what he tells me to do. I say, Exactly. And you know what? Guess what? I'm not going to hound you on that. If you don't want to do that, we'll find something you do want to do, but I'm not going to be the dad that's all over you all the time, because that doesn't help our relationship and doesn't teach you how to be a self-motivated worker. And you know what? Next couple of weeks, it didn't work at all. He was still lazy. But you know what? In 3 months, and today, he's a hardworking kid. Not just because of that, but do you see the difference? I mean, the difference is we think we're doing well by getting on to our kids all the time and being on them, but in reality, and there's a place for that, but what if we switch to being more inspiring and more encouraging and having different methods? And that's what that's what, after I started realizing this stuff and how much it impacted my home, I started writing it down and just said, hey, I'm going to teach some people how to do this, because this is amazing. And it's not me. Nothing I did is original. I mean, it's all coming from different people and from the Bible and from, talking to dads in front of me or whatever. But the only thing I have the gift of is being able to summarize it and put it in a way that people can understand.
Yeah, well, much needed, very practical. And on behalf of all the dads out there and granddads, thank you very much.
It's good, and we're still working on it now. It's like, in this last season of life, if you will. Hopefully, my dad died when he was 92. I hope I got a good run to go. But that's what we're focused on. Is that's you're talking about a calling. Now I know my calling in this last season of life is to help as many parents, in this case dads, as possible. There's so many dads out there. I mean, Terry, you were just talking about learning to listen to your wife. You love your wife. You don't want to hurt your wife. You want her to be seen, heard, understood, loved, connected with. But you learned a different method, and now you can do it better. I mean, that's fair, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all we're doing, is we're saying, let's take dads who are good men, who are hard workers, that are providing for their family, that are want the best relationships with their kids. All we're going to do is take that raw material and teach you some different methods that are going to unlock some things with your family that are going to be amazing to you.
Yeah, that is so awesome. Listen, if you had to give, or you have the opportunity now with the guys that are listening, one piece of advice you'd share with someone who's just starting as a dad, or maybe they're going through a rough patch right now with their kids. I know there's a ton of stuff. What would be the one thing you'd tell them?
Man, I would tell them to focus on connecting with their child. And what I mean by that is that, when we go through the different types of relationships in your home, and go through how to connect with your child, and there's a progression. It's acceptance, connection, discipline, inspiration. When you accept that, when you build this level of acceptance, hey, I just tell a dad, if he's struggling with, at home, man, just go put your arm around your son and say, hey, I love you. Did you know that you're just amazing to me? And man, I'm sorry for where I mess up as a dad, but I love you, and I want to be connected with you. You're important to me. Those connection statements are, you just watch kids melt. I'll go to a conference. Maybe this is two. One of them is to connect. And the second one is this one is tell your kids who they are instead of who they're not. So instead of, so I go up to and make it a way of life. Wow, son, you're a mighty man of God. What if it's not true? Well, then speak what you want to happen as if it already is. Tell them who they are. Wow, you are a loved child of God. When you start doing that to a man and a boy, you watch their chest start to bow up. They start to strut a little bit because my daddy, the daughter, she perks up, her head comes up, her countenance changes. Why? Because Daddy has said, I'm amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, understanding, I think, our place in their life to be able to speak into that. There's only, that kind of affirmation can really only come from one place.
And with the best intentions,
the
we are usually more on the other side, that we are getting onto them with great intentions. Again, we're talking to good men here. We're talking to people who want the best for their family. We think the best thing we can do is to I'm going to keep getting on them until they get it right. But what I really don't realize is I'm damaging the relationship, and I'm building this atmosphere, this culture to where they're scared of me. I'm building a culture to where they don't think they're enough. And so I'm actually damaging their confidence. And so then when I build up their confidence and I build up the relationship, now they start to succeed beyond my wildest expectations.
That's so good. Listen, we ask every guest that's on the show this one question. What does it mean to man up?
What does it mean to what?
To man up.
Ooh, brings up a lot of thoughts. Okay, so where I'm at right now, where it means to man up for me, where God's working in my life is, am I willing to love like Christ loves? And here's what I mean by that. This is my next book right now. It's called The Love Prayer, and that love, and this came from Dallas Willard, actually. If you know who Dallas Willard is, he's a theologian. He just passed away recently. Just amazing, like a C.S. Lewis type guy. But Dallas Willard says, and I paraphrase this, that love is a condition of the heart, in which we purpose to look out for the best interests of others within our sphere of influence. Okay, so in every situation, as people are reacting to me and doing things to me, especially within my family, am I willing to condition my heart to look out for their best interest and to build them up in every situation? That, to me, is a big man up for me, because man, it's hard. And I have to do a lot of trusting in the Lord that He's going to take care, that He's got my back, that I can take my hurts to Him, that He can heal me in order to make it happen. So that's my man up for the day.
It's pretty good. Pretty good. How does Don want to be remembered when his life's over here on the earth? Like, what kind of mark do you want to leave that can't be erased?
That one's pretty simple. That within my family and within many, many families that God brings to us within our sphere of influence, that I would be known as a man who loved Jesus, loved my wife, and promoted the good of families all over the world.
Very admirable. Thanks so much for joining us on the show today, man. This has been a real pleasure just to getting to know you and letting the audience get to know you. Tell them where they can find more resources, because I know you have a ton of them, and they'd be super helpful to our audience today.
Yeah, the best way, super simple. We communicate with our following, if you will, through email. We do social media. We're on Facebook and all that stuff. But I mean, we primarily, and we are expanding our way that we teach parents, teach and inspire parents, inspire and equip, if you will, through emails. So the first thing I would do is just go to crazycoolfamily.com and sign up for our email list. And at that point, we have you in a communication portal that we can then communicate everything else to you. So that's super simple. If you want to go one step further, on our website, in our store, we have 2 workbooks. One called The Guide to Building Family Relationships, and the other called The Guide to Creating Family Culture. On our website, about $20 a piece. They are like the Bible, I think, to building a godly family. That's all that we've crystallized. They're super easy to work with. So I tell men all the time, if you want to just take a tiny step, just get the email. sign up for the email and we'll start connecting with you. You can get acquainted just like you're seeing the daily emails. If you want to go a more significant step, sign up for the emails and get the guides and start to walk through those with you, walk through them and with your spouse.
Awesome. Yeah. And guys, I really encourage you to do that. You know, Don made a statement earlier on, we know more about fantasy football than we do fatherhood sometimes. Here's your opportunity. This is a resource. The first one's free. I think that one will, it'll whet your appetite. And once you leave you wanting for more, and he's got the other resources for $20, which is less than the cost of a pizza. You could change the destiny of your entire family. So Don, again, thanks for being with us on the show today. Guys, remember, legacy is not what we leave to people, but it's really what we leave in them. We'll see you next time on the Man Up Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Man Up Podcast. For more resources on your journey to becoming a better man, check out manupadventurecamp.com. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for our daily newsletter for encouragement and tips. If you haven't attended Man Up Adventure Camp yet, it's your time. Sign up now for Man Up 2025. We'll see you around the fire.